Good evening and welcome to the latest episode of the Eve Prosper Market Show. I'm your host Lockefox, and we are here with all the news you need to know with the YC118.8 release, which I've had the hardest time saying, but that's going to be behind us here coming up. With that, let's get straight into the first segment of the show where we talk about the show in general, just sort of an update for all of you fans, how you can watch us, when you can watch us, where you can watch us. So give me 2 seconds. That's that button. Oops, no, it's that button. To the peaceful undock of the Jita undock. So again, everybody who tunes into the show, thank you once again. We are back again from hiatus. We are on the air every Thursday night US. That's Friday night Eve time, 0300. We are expecting to be at Eve Vegas coming up in a few weeks. I need to make sure that all of our plans are set in stone. So if you want to shake hands, have a beer, chat about how wrong I am with my predictions, that is going to be the best place to do so. If you want to follow the show, again, all you got to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and our blog. And if you want to see me, as in me, the human host, the meat behind the mic, on a random stream that has nothing to do with Eve, I was on Hyper RPG's stream today. We played Rocket League. It was an experience. Like they had a whole professional studio going on. It was quite a show. You guys should go check it out. Carried the whole team to victory. And also, last piece of news before we go into the show, I'm aiming to do office hours on Saturday, sometime between 18 and 2000 in Eve. Don't know exactly when that's going to run, if we're going to be able to be online like I expect to be. But be tuned in on Twitter and on Slack if you guys want to drop by, just shoot the shit. I've got some code that I'm working on that I want to get finished. Getting really close to feature complete on our warehouse code, which I know that almost nobody really cares about, but means a lot to me because it should, quote unquote, make life a lot easier for a lot of things. We'll talk about more of that in the post show though. So, last, but certainly not least, as we go out of this, I want to remind everybody, if you want to support the show, the very best way is to tell you and your friends to tune in live or tune in to the VOD on YouTube. But if you want to support us monetarily, we do provide this show ad-free. We are on here every week, giving you the best market news in all of Eve, and it's because of our patrons. Our patrons keep the lights on, keep the show running, and you can support us directly at patreon.com/EveProsper. I hopefully next week, if mail actually arrives, I'm going to start talking about rewards for the patrons in swag, basically trying to do lifetime donation awards for people, and so keep tuned to that. I won't reveal anything until I actually have swag in hand and have a plan, but go support us if you can. It really does mean a lot. So with all of that babble, let's go ahead and actually get into the news. First piece of news is Thansoli is sad that I'm not playing Rocket League with him tonight. I decided I had to do this show for you guys instead. As we can see, happiness increases with time spent playing Rocket Cars with Thansoli, and decreases to 0 as we go make more graphs. So I want all the fans to know that you're making Thansoli sad, and that he even gave me a graph to show me how sad he was. So that's a graph. I love graphs. With that, let's go into the real news. First piece of news is the Purity of the Throne event is in full swing, and though there was a bug on release that it turns out fighting for the NPCs that are part of the event were going to tank your Amar standing, that has been fixed at least. There was also a huge land grab for some of the skins in there. Some white skins are going around the markets, and were making extreme amounts of money, but then the power curve kicked in and are at far more reasonable rates at the moment. So that's been interesting to watch unfold. I'm a big fan of these in-game events, the way they're set up. It does drive engagement. It is interesting to watch, and it's definitely interesting to come into the game and have something different to do every month. And then the other big piece of news in the 118.8 release is the mining barge overhaul. Again, we talked about this in the last couple of shows. We expect to see yields get a little bit screwed up. We're going to talk about those in the minerals section of the show. I don't know if that's going to wash out exactly this week, but we should be able to see the trends definitely in next week's show. I'm interested to see how things are going to go. I actually like most of the changes the way they have been, but I've been so busy with all the stuff that I have not had time to get my nose on the grindstone and really bang out what the real numbers mean yet. So I will be digging into this and watching it very closely. And with that, let's get into the main meat of the show, the most important part, the price of Plex, which is tracking, as of this show, up above the 1.1 mark. Trends look strong, and this is mostly due to CCP has put out an ultimatum that if you want the November Omega rewards, you need to have an active account as of tonight. The deadline for that may have passed. I don't know if it ends tonight or tomorrow. So make sure that if you want those rewards, you got to be subscribed before we do the Alpha Clone crossover. And Plex prices have been tracking up because of it. Now, again, we're not out of line of performance we'd expect to see. Again, things are tracking at a rate that I think is okay. We're picked up the pace where we had flattened the last couple of weeks. We have resumed the slope that we were at. It's a little bit on the hot side, so I expect to see things crash down, and the fact that we're crossing this top RSI line means that the price should turn around in the next hours. If we zoom all the way in on the actual market, we can see what looks like a troubling shortage as we drop below 1,000 active Plex on the market, which signals to me, at least, and this is my personal bet, is that as the second that the promotion window closes, CCP will open up a Plex sale for 10% off, like they usually do, and we'll see things correct. If we don't, we may see a very hot weekend as people overcompensate and push the price over the 115 mark. I really don't expect that. I feel rather confident in CCP's behavior at this point. We saw a very similar pattern after the bidding cycle for the Alliance tournament caused a similar shortage, and we saw a week-long sale right after that. I expect something similar here, but now that I've said it out loud, CCP Quant might just troll me again like he trolled me on the economic numbers, and that's the thing I'm missing in here. God damn it. Oh man, I was supposed to put economic numbers on here. Oh well, go read the blog. I put a whole blog out. I got a bunch of shit because I said there wasn't much going on. Damn it, I am so bad at this. We'll talk about this in the post-show. That's the only way I can do this. We'll see if CCP Quant trolls me again in the with the Plex sale not happening. I seriously doubt it though, because like we have about half the number of Plex that we need on the market. Looking at the spreads between the other RMT items, things are looking good. As we track up on Plex, we see that it starts to outstrip the skill extractor paces, which is interesting to see that lag. It looks like there's like a 12-hour lag between skill extractors and Plex, somewhere between 12 and 24 hours, which is actually a pretty interesting thing. We've seen this kind of pattern happen with the multiple pilot training certificates, but recently they've really broken out of whatever pattern they had. And now they're playing by their own rules. And with skill extractors, again, this is a slightly better way to cash in new money, but I think that we'll again, it's barely noticeable, the difference at the moment. And if Plex keeps shooting off, if we don't see a Plex sale, we might see extractors actually lag Plex in the coming days, which will be interesting to watch. Moving on to skill injectors. Skill injector market is looking worse and worse for farmers. Every time Plex goes up in price, the price of injectors just doesn't really reflect that. They've been staying relatively flat, even falling, with sell orders staying strong, and it looks like just demand is not as strong as it really should be. Again, I keep saying this week over week that I would not be against CCP coming back to the drawing board and adjusting the penalty windows, especially on the top end of the spectrum. I think that opening up the slippage for high ends to be more like a 50% loss rate or a 60% loss rate as opposed to the 90% loss rate that we're seeing right now would be a way to stir up this particular market. I like seeing skill points get destroyed in this with injection, but again, we can't see how many skill injectors are actually getting consumed and how many are just sort of floating because of farmers washing each other's hands. So I'd be really interested to hear from Quant at Vegas how the skill extractors are working going on. So I should go bug him about that. If we actually look at the skill injector prices, again, things are relatively stable, but even though Plex has risen a good 8 or 9% in the last week, skill injectors have stayed flat. This is not a 6 or 8% increase, which is terrible. So again, it's not a great time for zombie farmers. They're still making cash. They're still getting quote unquote free money. They're just not getting very much of it. And with fees and overhead, that might start to not look like a great investment for some of those guys. Moving on to market indexes, which I really should have expanded, so mea culpa on that. If we look at net trade, things are looking good after the latest patch. Things are starting to warm in August, which is what we wanted to see. September has been looking not bad, which is about as much as I can ask for at this point. We were seeing growth in the one that makes me a little bit upset is the ship market down on the bottom. I was hoping that we would cross over the 1 trillion mark and head towards maybe 1.1, 1.5 trillion. And we just haven't seen that heat come up. We are still seeing very strong gains in the mineral market ahead of the 118.8 release, which is good news. And the RMT market is, of course, gangbusters, but I was really hoping that ships would start to climb up over that 1 trillion bar, because I think that being under that bar is unhealthy for industrialists. It's unhealthy for market PvPers, and it just sort of shows it shows sort of a slump that I expect to come. Like I think it's a bad headwind to watch out for. But looking at the PvP stats, things are still reasonably good. We saw a pretty active August. I had to pull these numbers before the 118.8 release came out, so we're not completely up to date. Trends are looking a little bit sluggish in the last week or so, which is not great, but nothing terribly. Again, it's not terrible. This is what I said in my market review for August, is that nothing is really terrible. It's just not great. And I start to worry when things get flat. nothing is going to make anybody go crazy. Nobody should be jumping out of buildings or saying that Eve is dying. It's not great, and hopefully September turns this around. Hopefully, as we see the events come back up, I'm hoping we come back with dailies with the... It'd be really great if dailies came back with the Blood Harvest event in October. So things could get better. We're not completely screwed. It's just, it's sad. It's slow and lethargic and fat and stupid, and I hate it, and I want it to be better, because if we can't get above certain levels of activity, it's really hard to make this show. There's really without the activity driving the engines of the economy, there's not a lot for me to report on, because just nothing is moving. No motion means you don't need me. So I'm hoping that turns around in the next month or so. Minerals should be very interesting this week. Tritanium is tracking slightly down. I think this just might be a correction after the launch, just to say that we're getting into our normal price. We're just under 6.0, so I mean it's not really that big a move. Zoomed in, we see the price actually peaking up as supplies dwindle. This is actually what I expected to see, and isn't going to show up in the crest graphs yet. Is that if you're a prudent investor and you bought out the market, once the yields get screwed, well, that should shock the price. And so if you were bought into Tritanium at the 6th level, which I don't remember what I said last week, I really should write this stuff down. We're tracking to 625, which is really not a bad markup when you think about it. It's like 4%. So it's not really enough to be speculating in my opinion, but that's not a bad bump in the TRIT price. If yields stay this low for more than a week or so, we might actually edge up to 7, which would be excellent for any Tritanium speculator. But I can't tell you on the show to go buy Tritanium, because I think that's not a good bet for 90% of the viewers of this show. Pyrite is interesting. It's unstable, but oscillating around 9.2, which again is not terrible. We're not seeing quite the diminish in yield yet here, but we have the potential to wipe out maybe 50% off the market in the upcoming weekend. So I'd keep a finger on this. If you're bought in under 9, again, you're aiming for maybe 10, and that's gonna be a hard target to hit, I think, on Pyrite. So I don't think this is a buy, but that's just my personal opinion. We're looking a little bit thin. We've gone from 10 billion units to 7 billion units on the market, so I kind of think the price has to rise. I just don't think you're going to get the 10% that you should be really looking for in long-term speculation. Mexilon, excuse me one sec. Mexilon, which has been a darling of the show in the past, is now under the 65 mark, which is great. And we're seeing some dips in supply, which could bump the price up. I think this one's a good one to make your 10% on. It's a risky bet. It's a 50-50 bet, in my opinion, that we'd have to fall under the 1 billion line and stay under the 1 billion line for about a week to get there, I think. But I think that 70 is a ambitious but possible target. 65 is not a bad price to hit. There's actually enough room in here to play the buy order spread and jump in and aim for something in a 65, 68. I think is not unreasonable. I just think that if you buy into this, you need to be watching the market like a hawk for your exit, because I don't think the exit period is going to be more than maybe a day. Isogen. Now, Isogen, I've been ranting about this for weeks. I think that CCP Fozzie, when he redid Amber, kind of screwed the pooch for Isogen. I still think a long-term target for Isogen is 100, but we've bounced off the 80 mark and are heading to 85, which is a great news if you've been sitting on Isogen. We peaked to 90 today, which is, again, very, very interesting. I think that, again, we need to see supplies get diminished another 100 million units and stay down for about a week to keep that greater than 90 mark up. I know that I had said in the past that buying in at 80 is not a bad buy-in. I just didn't know when you could cash out. Well, if you followed me last week, you could cash out right now. I just still don't think this is a buy for people who are listening to the show right now, but things could be volatile over the next week. And getting in under the 85 mark would be not a bad place to park some long-term ISK. If you were willing to, if you wanted to hedge the Plex crash that usually happens in December, this might be a way to make that money last a little bit longer and cash out in February or something. I just don't know when you're going to get the 100 ISK I think it's going to go to. I just don't know when we'll get there. Noxium was a little bit interesting last week, but is still staying around the 400-420 band. And again, I actually expect this price to fall slightly with the changes. I expect a little bit more Noxium to be coming out of nullsec. I think that the price is steady where it's at. The supplies are relatively steady where they're at. We might see a shock over the next week, but I don't think that there's anything really spectacular going on in Noxium. Zydrine, though, looks boring on here, and I think under the hood, if I remember correctly, things are actually a little bit more interesting. I kind of expect this price to fall again, expecting more high ends to come to market with constriction in the low ends, and we're seeing that slide happen now. This is a 50-50 point, in my opinion, as of right now, streaming this show to the live people. This is a 50-50 point. Either you buy in because this is an overcorrection, because the supplies haven't really got that hot. So we might see things go from the 1.08 and rebound back over the 1.1 mark, which isn't a terrible way to play. It's not going to make you a ton of money, but it would be an interesting play. Or it's going to keep falling and you shouldn't buy in. I think that neither one of those is compelling enough to really buy anything, so I take back the clickbait I said a few minutes ago. Megasite, again, whatever I say about Zydrine, I think the same thing about Megasite. We're seeing prices stay stable around 1,300, which isn't terrible. Again, we're seeing actually supplies diminish, but I think this is a speculative wave more than a real thing. So prices are up very slightly. They might be up this weekend, but I expect them to be down by Monday. So we'll take a closer look at this next week for sure. Morphite is under 10,000, which again, as I've said before, under 10,000 I think is a good place to buy Morphite, but I also think that it has room to fall. We're seeing a positive trend in the supplies, which I think will drive the price closer to 9.5 rather than 10 like we're seeing it right now. Again, I don't think this is a great place to be betting for money, but if you needed something to hold on to for a long time, Morphite has not been bad. It tends to peak when people are active, and if you can get it under 10K, you can usually get rid of it over 10K, but like I said, the window to invest on that is very long, extremely long. But let's go ahead and move on to fuel. Fuel isotopes are staying relatively stable. The hydrogen isotope market, I think, is a little bit interesting. I'm not tuned into the capital meta, so that might be what's driving this, but hydrogen isotopes are just going gangbusters. I can't believe they're actually at the same rate as nitrogen isotopes when the nitrogen isotopes are going into REAs and industrial POSs. Again, I expect nitrogen to fall again once the new industrial arrays hit, and we lose a whole bunch of industrial POSs, but Until then, 800 I think is going to be your steady price. I don't think there's a whole bunch of interesting stuff going on under the hood right now. Again, looking at the blocks, we see that any spike in isotope price has been reflected in fuel block prices. I still think that Caldari blocks are undervalued, but it can't be by very much. So, oh, excuse me. Next, strontium, I had said was in shortage last week, and it was a good time to sell, and I actually expected the prices to go higher than they did. I expected to go almost to 10K, and it just sort of went up like 200 isk and then fell back down. So mea culpa on that. I really expected with that much shortage that we'd see more price spike, but sometimes I guess I can't call them. 1 minute. Moving on to outliers. We're going to start where we usually do in advanced materials. Again, just like last week, I don't think there's a lot interesting going on. Fermionic condensates dropping is interesting, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Fulleриdes dropping, I did expect. I actually expected this spike to stay higher longer, but what are you going to do? The carbides look to be relatively stable. They're tracking up a little bit, but they're inherently unstable. And the metamaterials seem to be stable, so there's not a whole bunch going on there. I find it interesting that the whole middle band of fulleриdes, hypersynaptic fibers, and nanotransistors are as weak as they are is again a testament to just how weak the ship market is. If we were actually consuming ships at like a 20% higher rate than we are right now, we'd start to see real demand for these things. And I think that POS holders are just sort of losing their lunch here in the middle, and I think that's really bad news for the higher-ups, as I think that this weakness will bubble up into your ferrogels and your fermionic condensates, and just leave everybody not making a bunch of money, which is just not good for anybody. This is why I'm not happy about the ship rates that are going on right now. Again, fermionic condensates, what we can see is a huge glut going on here, and again, that's pointing to people have come to market and just the market does not need them. It does not want them. There's about twice as much as should be on the market. And I don't know if this is just an idiot speculator screwing shit up. To be this elongated, I can't. It's got to be a new POS owner just doesn't know what they're doing. A lot of new POS owners are just sort of dumping, it looks like. So until this glut clears up, I think the prices are going to be low. If you want to make a long-term bet, I think the sub 55K is not a bad price. It could stand to fall under 50, so be sure to watch for that. I'd be keeping a very close eye on buy orders if you want to speculate here. I think the price can go up. I don't know when, and until the ship consumption lines start tracking up, until we start seeing that over the 1 trillion mark, I don't think we're going to see. I think the Tech 2 market's going to be really shallow and just flooded with moon goo, and it may be that we're stuck with that until the industrial arrays come out, so which would be terrible. I really hope that this turns around faster than that. Again, dysprosium is another piece of this puzzle, and we see that the price is still tracking up despite the glut in supply. We're not quite at like crazy glut levels. We were at a steady state of 2 million before August, and it looks like we could be on track to either stay at 2.5 or track up to 3. If we go up to 3 million on market, I think that'll tank the price under the 70K mark. And again, that's a not bad place to walk in on, but I don't know when you're going to get your money back. So I think things are going to get worse before they get better. And remind me, be sure to tune in if you guys want to speculate in on this market. The key metric I want to be watching for is the total ship trade. If that starts tracking up over the 1 trillion mark, towards the 1.5 trillion mark, maybe the 2. Oh God, what a world. I think that we'll see this this start to get remedied, but we need to see sustained activity washing ships through the system, and we're just not seeing that, which is incredibly worrying for a guy like me. It's not the end of the world, but it's a bad omen. Looking across at the high-end PI markets, nano factories are tracking up. Looks like somebody is buying out the market, perhaps speculating ahead of the industrial arrays, the engineering arrays, excuse me. And I think this is not a bad bet. I think this is more for people who are producing nano factories to be aiming for a 1.415 price point. I don't know if I would rejigger an array if I'm not already making nano factories yet. It's a little bit hit or miss, but ever since Citadel has launched, I have not kept as close an eye on the PI4 markets. So if you guys need more information about that, we can talk about it in the post-show. Looking across to the T3 market, fullerene interlaced graphite is on a tear, and I believe that this is a wormhole material, which tells me that perhaps there's a whole bunch of evictions going on, I think is what's going on here. This is a low-end material, though. It's not really a moneymaker, so I don't know if this is just straight up... It looks more like manipulation than a real thing going on under the hood. Unfortunately, when I pulled this... We don't do a zoom in on this particular item, so I'm not sure exactly what's going on in the market. Moving into the PvP darling, the Svipul, again, is still seeing alarming production rates, and we should all know by now that this party is coming to an end, and I wouldn't want to be holding Svipuls after October. If you're invested in these, if you're building these, I would be shutting down my lines by October 1st. You're playing with fire, and the second that CCP Fozzie or CCP Rise release their ideas on rebalancing these things, I think you're going to lose your shirt. And we're seeing just an astronomical number of these things coming to market, and part of it is that they're not getting consumed off the market. Again, the general slowdown in ship consumption. And the other part of it is that I think that this is that whole everybody's become wise to the party, and now you need to get out so you're not holding the check. I think Svipuls are going to crash. It's going to be ugly. I just don't know when Rise or Fozzie are going to talk about it. So don't be the last person at the party. You're going to have to just clean up the mess. Another darling from last week in the news this week again is the Gnosis. Again, the story, if you missed it last week, was that when alpha clones were released, savvy investors saw, hey, alpha clones can fly Gnosises, and bought up the market and tracked up the price. And then CCP Seagull was like, and in November we're printing off a bunch of extra ones, and the price dropped back down. I expected things to get a little bit more chaotic over the next couple of weeks, but with the release of these things so far out, I just may have overestimated. I expected us to bounce between 65 and 55 once or twice over the next couple of weekends, but it seems that everyone was like, hooray, great idea, oh shit, bad idea, and that the story's over. So we'll keep an eye on this. I don't know if we'll report on it. We may end up putting it in the next section just to keep an eye on it. Another interesting one is the Stratios is a very popular ship. It hits our PvP hits our PvP filter every week. A lot of Stratioses die every week, and they're expensive enough that since I filter on value and filter out capitals, they come up every week. And they had been tracking up, and it looks like that party is coming to an end. So if you were holding on Stratioses, you should sell this weekend. You should be out, you should get your 200 million, and you should count your money. The price is going to come back down under the 190 mark as these new supplies come to market. With more people exploring, with the events going on, and activity coming up, I expect Stratios supplies to track up again, and prices to come back under the 190 million mark. So this is the time to cash out. Just get them to market and sell them. Get rid of them right now. Now on to one of the last segments of the show, the prediction review, where we go through and figure out if I know what I'm talking about. Jump freighters, because we talk about jump freighters every week because I'm a self-indulgent prick about it. Reyes were up 2 weeks ago, down this last week, and now they're up again. It's been another bad week for Reyes. Also for Charons, as we'll see in the PvP review. So prices are they're performant. It's just prices are up again over the 8.5 billion mark. Anshars are also tracking up strongly. This may be due to isotope substitution. Prices are just so high that you'd want to get you may be a cheapskate and be willing to give up a little bit of space. I'm not. I like the Rhea. Min-max your heart out. Quaff Zero, again, we brought this up last week that if you were holding some, you should sell some, and I was right. So we've come off 9 million and we're heading under 8 million. We should be back to the 7.5 million, maybe even under. Especially with the Blood Raider event coming out in October, this party's going to be over. It's going to be a good chance to buy, but I would wait until the Blood Raider event starts before I try to buy any Quaff Zero. Actually, the performance on this thing has been like clockwork. I'm really happy about this particular product. The Gila is another interesting one. I don't remember what I said last week. I do like keeping a close eye on this one, but looks like we've fallen under a critical supply line and peaked up to 270 million, which if you're holding ELAs, you should sell them like right now. Like pause the show, go do it right now. I think this is temporary. I just can't think of Gilas staying undersupplied like this for as long as they are. So I'd give it another week before I tell you what the long-term trend is. But if you're holding them, you might as well get them sold. It's a great chance to get rid of them if you've been holding on to them. The prices have been a little bit anemic down at this 240 mark, and you should go sell. 270 is a great thing. You could get 280 maybe, but 270 is better than 250. So I'd be selling. Another interesting ship has been the Ishtar. We saw as people have been moving back out into old Goonlands, the price had been tracking up. Supplies were a little anemic. Looks like supplies have come in and oversupplied, overshot the target as we're sitting at the 600 mark right now, and the prices are on track to 200 million. Not exactly sure when or where we'll hit the bottom of this. I would hope for 200 million, but again, without having the shading to tell me what the actual production margin is, that's a really hard thing to tell you. But this oversupply is just silly. So I'd be watching this over the weekend, and if you can get on one of these buy orders in the 190 mark, it might not be a bad ship to sit on for the next, few months as we go into the winter. As more people move out to the drone lands, we should be back over the 210 mark eventually, probably in the next few weeks, as all of these industrialists eat their hats and do that sad, like the lose at the horse races thing, where you tear up the tickets and you throw them on the ground, and you throw your hat on the ground and you stomp on the hat. They'll be doing that. This meme has gone way off the rails. And another one we talked about last week was the adaptive nanoplating has finally got back to its normal route. The prices on this were a little astronomical, and I'm not sure exactly what was going on under the hood here, but the prices seem to be back to relatively normal. So that party is over. We may see a spike over this weekend as the ripples still shake out. There may be a little bit of overcorrection, but unless you're already invested in this at the 20K mark, the 200K mark, then I wouldn't be playing this game. And last, but certainly not least, I'm going to take a drink of my drink. And tell you about violence. That's what I'm going to do. Again, things are not looking so different here on the per ship activity. SFIPL activity is down again this week. Down pretty sharply. Again, that's kind of expected. All of the activity is down in general, but that might be a sampling problem. I might have a bug. I should fix that. The trends are not looking great. We're under the 200 mark for units consumed. The Macarial was hot the last couple of weeks, but it doesn't seem like goons are doing much of anything lately, which is bad news. I like seeing them getting their shit kicked in. If we look at the ships, the solar systems, interesting to see Uedama back on the list. And we're not seeing Tama, which is interesting. We usually see Tama on this list along with Jita. We usually also tend to see Nyarja. We're not seeing Nyarja, which is also interesting. Looks like it's a particularly bad week for space truckers in Uedama. Also, KLY Tax C0 looks like I think KLY and 7RM were on our list last week. I'm not sure about DO6. So kind of an interesting smatter of places. We're not seeing as much activity in low sec, which if things were getting quiet, I always expect them to be at a low boil. So that's kind of interesting to me. Again, this is that things are a little bit too quiet, and it's just, again, plays into my slight worries. And if we look at regions, Black Rise, Fade, Pureblind, Citadel, and Forge is not an interesting list, in my opinion. It's you always see the Forge and the Citadel and Black Rise. Fade and Pureblind are not usually that far behind on a top 10 list. So things are just quiet and a little bit boring, which I think is okay. It just has me worried. So with that, we're going to go ahead and end the show here. I've been your host, Lockefox. You've been watching the Prosper Market Show. If you want to tune in live, you can do so on Twitch and YouTube at 0300 on Fridays. That is Thursday night US. We're on the air every week. If you want to follow the show, all you got to remember is Eve Prosper. That'll get you to Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and the blog. If you want to support the show, be sure to tell all your friends about it. Get them to tune in. And if you want to buy us a beer or help keep the show on the air, we do provide the show ad-free, not even in-game ads. And that's thanks to our patrons. They pay our server bills. They pay our license bills. They make this show possible. So if you want to throw a few bucks in our jar, even if it's $1 a month, it's supremely appreciated. We will be talking about swag this month. I want to have swag for Eve Vegas. I will be at Eve Vegas. This is the most rambly ending I think I've done in a long time. I want to thank everybody who tuned in live. It's always great to tune in with you guys. Looks like the numbers are up a little bit higher. And also, due to popular demand, if you guys didn't catch it on YouTube, it is in glorious 1080p for your viewing pleasure. Hopefully that makes some of the graphs easier to read. But with that, I've been your host, Lockefox. This has been the Eve Prosper Show. And I'm signing off until next week. Fly safe, make a bunch of money.